2022 Summer Training. Week 9. Day 4. Morning Nourishment. 1 Peter 4:14. If you are reproached in the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. 1 Peter 5:10. But the God of all grace, He who has called you into His eternal glory in Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a little while, will Himself perfect, establish, strengthen, and ground you. The Spirit of glory is the Spirit of God. The Spirit of glory is the one through whom Christ was glorified in His resurrection. This very Spirit of glory, being the Spirit of God Himself, rests upon the suffering believers in their persecution for the glorification of the resurrected and exalted Christ, who is now in glory. Such a Spirit is the Spirit of God expressed through the suffering believers and the Spirit of the experienced God enjoyed by the suffering believers. The Spirit of glory certainly was upon Stephen when he was being martyred. According to the book of 1 Peter, the Spirit of Christ is in us, and the Spirit of glory rests upon us. One aspect of this wonderful Spirit is that the Spirit is in us to reveal Christ, and another aspect of the same Spirit is that He is also the Spirit of glory resting upon us to express God. The more we suffer and are persecuted for the Lord's sake, the more glory there will be upon us. Therefore, we should rejoice when we are reproached in the name of Christ, because the Spirit of glory and that of God is resting upon us. This Spirit of glory is the indwelling Spirit, the Spirit of Christ and the Spirit of grace, becoming the glory shining upon persecuted believers. Today's reading. 2 Peter 1:3 says that God has called us to, or by, His own glory. Furthermore, 1 Peter 5:10 says that God has called us into His eternal glory. According to 2 Timothy 2:10, God's salvation is with eternal glory. This indicates that eternal glory is the ultimate goal of God's salvation. God's salvation leads us into His glory. The Word, who was God, became flesh, and tabernacled among us, and we beheld His glory. Man was made by God in His image in order that man may express Him for His glory. But man sinned. Now instead of expressing God, man expresses sin and his sinful self. Therefore, man is short of God's glory. Nevertheless, we have been ordained for God's glory and called to it. As believers, we are being transformed into this glory and shall be brought into it. Eventually we shall be glorified with Christ to bear the glory of God for God's expression in the New Jerusalem. Romans 9:23 says, in order that He might make known the riches of His glory upon vessels of mercy, which He had before prepared unto glory. God created us as His vessels to contain Him and express Him. God makes known the riches of His glory upon us, His vessels, which He has prepared unto glory. We were predestinated by His sovereignty to be His containers, vessels of honor, to express what He is in glory. God moves within us as the God of all grace, perfecting, establishing, strengthening, and grounding us so that we may participate in His eternal glory, into which He has called us in Christ. Eventually, through God's move in us, we will participate in His eternal glory. The eternal glory will not come to us by accident. The coming glory is being built up today by God's move in us. He is now perfecting us to build up that glory. He is now establishing us to build up that glory. He is now strengthening us and grounding us to build up that glory. Eventually, that glory will be a building, the holy city, the New Jerusalem. The place where we should be is the divine glory, which is now being